the most satisfying step of all. I'm better probably explaining music, so we're both learning something. You just want to touch it just a teeny bit, just a tiny bit. Peace, y'all. This is Duckwrth. I'm on Artist DIY, and I'm making my wild pieces I call looky-loos. The materials I'll be using today. Starting off, this circular wood piece, because the inspiration for these pieces are pretty much eyeballs, some tape so that you can mask some of the paint, Sharpie, X-Acto, a couple of paint brushes. Having a fine point one makes a lot of sense because later on we're gonna be doing some shadowing. You want a primer. Most importantly, spray paint. What you wanna do, you wanna start off with primer because you wanna get the white of the eye, and this is what the primer would do. This is pretty much what it would look like. It dries in like 30 minutes. For the next step, in order to get a nice white of the eye shape, you wanna tape off your wooden piece. Put as much tape in the middle as you possibly can. I chose to make eyes because as an artist, it's always a lot of pressure on you. There's always people looking, critiquing, judging, enjoying, but overall, it's all eyes on me. I thought that it'd be nice to make a whole lot of eyes to represent some of those pressures. This process is very subjective, so if you want the white of the eye to be lower, you can move it lower. You can move it higher up here, or you can keep it in the middle. Now, we draw the shape of the white of the eye. This shape is more like of a football, but a very sharp football. And if you mess up on your lines, it's okay, because you can go over them. So, a lot of people don't know, but I was raised in South Central Los Angeles. I was raised in the 90s, and there was a lot of gang activity, police brutality. It was the 92 riots where the police beat up Rodney King, and the city responded in a pretty crazy way. So I don't remember too much, but I do remember the gang activity, and I do remember the police. It was a beautiful place, but sometimes it could be traumatizing to be like raised in those neighborhoods. But the beautiful thing about it is it gives you a certain bit of resilience. It gave me pretty much a backbone, and I'm in the music business, and that's the main place you need to have a backbone, because they'll try to pull you every which way, and you need to be able to stand your ground. We got our football shape. Next step, X-Acto. You want to be careful because these things are very sharp. Cut at this line that you just made. You want to be as precise as possible. If you move too much, the effect of the white of the eye gets kind of janky, so I take my time. So pretty much I was raised in the church. My whole family is musicians. It was always music around. That's mainly what I got from being in the church, was the music. It taught me music composition, and mainly it gave me an ear so I can know if like a person singing off key or not. A lot of restrictions. I really couldn't experience certain layers of life that my other friends got to experience at a younger age. But it gave me grounding. It taught me humility. It gave us hope, because once again, South Central in the 90s was not the safest. So next step, you want to take off these outside pieces. We're gonna spray paint this whole thing, but you don't want this to be hit by the paint. And that's what gives it the effect of the white of the eye. With my X-Acto, I try to go as deep as possible so I can get the most precise of lines and I won't mess up pulling these parts, which I did. I just messed up, but it's okay. So I actually wanted to veer away from making music. I went to school for graphic design, but what happened was my friend, he made this song where he rapped over an MF Doom beat, and he was like, you wanna hop on this? And I used to freestyle in high school because I wasn't like the most popular, and so in order to like kind of like gain some popularity, I would just like freestyle and like battle people. That was my way I like gained coolness, I suppose. So I hopped on this MF Doom beat. After it was all done, I like sat back and I heard my vocals, and it just, I don't know, it just made sense. Now we have all the outside layer off. The next step is gonna be adding skin tone. We're gonna start off with this khaki color, and that would be the base. Sometimes when you spray from overhead, it kind of makes it clog up. So you want to kind of shoot it from more of a 45 degree. Just keep kind of going over the surfaces until you don't see any white anymore. So now we have a beige khaki colored undertone. Now we're gonna move to stone texture. It's an actual like grain texture. If you get too close to it, it'll create these white gaps, which you don't want. So same thing, foot away. It literally sprays like little grains and stuff. Also, it's probably good to wear a mask while you spray paint. You don't want to be breathing all these fumes. If you see little parts that's not fully immersed in the grain, you want to just pull away a little bit and squeeze it ever so gently, and that covers the surface a little bit more. You don't have to worry about hitting the middle too much because we're going to be ripping that tape off. So we're going to let it dry. So this next step may be the most satisfying step of all. You want to take the edge of your X-Acto, find where the tape starts on the edge, and slowly peel it up. If you pull it off too soon, it's still wet and it'll find its way through the tape, and you don't want that. And now you can see the white of the eye. My first full-length album, I'm Ugly. Pretty much the name came from my affinity for funk and like groove. There's certain times where the bass hit, but it hit you so hard that like your face started to frown up. All of us in the room would just be like, so that's how we came up with the named I'm Ugly. So many people used to hit me on Instagram on a DM like, you're not ugly, you're not ugly. Like, why do you talk about yourself like that? It was hella funny. It's nice to know that people actually care. Next step, draw the iris. In order to get that right shape, I just draw dots of the round iris, and that lets me know where I should paint at. For an extra ugly mixtape, I wanted the same creative freedom that I had on I'm Ugly. Take certain like commercial sounds, more popular sounds, and mix that with like more of an edge of your hardcore type sound. Cause you know, like both sides of my inspiration of music, one side Michael Jackson, but then the other side is Bad Brains. So I want to just take those two worlds. One that's really smooth and shiny and finished, and the other one's very rough, and bring those together, and now it's Extra Ugly Mixtape. And I got to really see what it's like to have your songs in movies and TVs and games. You know, that was saying a lot, being like a black kid from South Central, you know? To be able to have those opportunities. Now that we have that shape of the iris, now tape around it, you wanna go as thin with the tape as possible. You don't wanna layer up too much, because you wanna make sure that those black dots that you just made can show up through the tape. Falling Man, pretty much, I was seeing how much time that we spent on social networks. It's crazy because a lot of the times where we like are looking at our phones, our heads are down as if we're like bowing to it. It kind of felt like idol worship in a way. And I remember when I was younger, they used to teach us about idol worship. So I was just like, man, that'd be a really crazy concept, the fall of society through these different distractions. I wanted to take that and remind people that it's better to just be yourself, rather than try to mimic anybody else that you see. Crazy part of it is that year I toured Europe for the first time, and Vienna was crazy. We got to explore the palaces, and fun thing is a lot of the depictions that we saw were of, you know what I'm saying, just European people. And I was like, it would be really sick if we can take those very royal, very decadent, opulent motifs and images, but put black people in them. Now, to ensure that you get the shape, because once again, you can see that the dots are poking through, but just to be sure, you can go about it and hit another line on top. Now, just to be sure that you don't get any paint on the white, I add some more tape to the white of the eye. Next step, we get to cutting the shape for the iris. Cut all the way through the tape. Take your X-Acto, as you did before, and peel off. So we got the shape. This is the moment where you paint the iris. It kind of has these sun rays shapes and stuff, and you can get that really nice with brush strokes of the paint. So today we're gonna use paint and brush. Now mind you, I've never explained my art process before. I'm better probably explaining music, so we're both learning something at this moment. I wish I had like Bob Ross bars though. If y'all don't know who Bob Ross is, he was this amazing painter from the 80s. White dude with like a nice little afro. And he was really great at explaining his process of painting, and it made you feel so warm. The only times I saw Bob Ross is when I was ditching school, because I hated school. Stay in school, kids. Don't ditch and watch Bob Ross. Once again, if you notice, the iris always has this sunshine type of effect. You can add a little bit more of the darker color so you can get more definition in the lines. So that's gonna be drawing for a bit. What I usually like to do with skin is, you know, you get the little bags under the eyes because you ain't slept. I guess it's individual. Is a little bit stressed, but you know, Corona would do that to you. Art is always subjective. It's never a right way of doing it. It's just what way works for you. And sometimes you have to do a bit of studying on your favorite artists. In the early parts, your favorites end up in your subconscious, so you end up kind of imitating them, but it's okay, it's a natural process. I would say try not to imitate, but if it happens, you know? As long as you keep developing yourself, that's all that matters. So I dropped a newer song called Find a Way. I was finding my way back to funk, dance, leaving Falling Man, which is a bit of a harder of an album, you know? And I've had this concept in my mind called Super Good, and Super Good is just pretty much a place where you can be in a safe space where you can feel happy and you can feel joy. And like for me, I didn't exactly feel joy. Even though I was doing music, you know what I'm saying, and traveling the world, there's still a bit of heaviness in my heart. So I never was able to get to that place where I can make this album super good. But I would say 2019, I finally got to that place. I started to find my joys again. I found love again. I found the reason I created art in the first place. So I was like, all right, cool, it's time to make Super Good. But I wanted to make the brave statement that I can stand in my joy. Now, it's really crazy because I didn't expect 2020 to look the way it has looked. I thought 2020 was gonna be nothing but just, we in that thing, celebrate, having a good time, dancing. It ain't been too much dancing. For a song like Find a Way, it's exactly that. When everything is burning, you know? Like, here's a little bit of like reminder that all this is gonna go somewhere. Like, we are gonna find our way eventually and inevitably, you know? It's saying that at the end of this, we're gonna celebrate. Because if you look at the 60s, the civil rights movement, black people were fighting just for equality in America. At the end of the 60s, they got it, you know, in certain ways. So the 70s, in a lot of ways, was a celebration of life, of being able to gain those rights as black people. So I feel after 2020, it's gonna be a similar type of celebration. People are gonna celebrate life again. And I'm gonna be there with the soundtrack for that celebration. Now we're at the final stretch. We get to pull off the tape. So isn't that sick? Look at that. Ah! And then from there, you can customize it as you please. Now once again, we're gonna have to let that dry, so I cooked up the final piece. I chose to put a little bit of a darker blue around the edges. I added a brown to the pupil and a little bit of red too. To get these dots, take your fine point brush, dip it into your darker blue, and ever so gently just add dots. The more you press into it, the bigger the dots. But if you want it to be super fine, you just want to touch it just a teeny bit, just a tiny bit. But you want to keep it thicker on the outside. And then as you get closer to the middle, you want to go smaller and smaller. It's another way of like shading. I'm probably gonna make like a good 5 of these and have them all looking in different direction. That's the thing, you can have it look this way, you have it look down. You can even flip it. I have an album coming out this year in 2020 called Super Good. I hope y'all get to stream it. Play it for your family, play it for your auntie, your sisters, your daughters, your dogs. Play it for your ancestors. I thank y'all. Thank you, Fuse, for letting me make my looky-loo pieces. And they may end up in a gallery or they may just end up in my living room. We'll see what happens. Thank y'all. Peace. Oh shit, is that the right exit?